Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to askNK. This is our weekly rundown of updates, events, and beautiful stuff happening within the Blender community, Blender Foundation, and also Blender as an app. And this week we have a couple of things that you guys will definitely want to take a look at. First off, we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the brand new nodes that's now available in Blender 2.93, as we are beginning to see that more and more stuff are coming over to the geometry node. And then we will proceed to talk about some pretty cool fresh add-ons right out of the Blender Studio that you can grab and start working with. Meanwhile, we'll also go ahead and do a comparison between that and also another add-on that is available, and all of these add-ons are for free, so just simply stick around to get that going. Now, for you to follow up with whatever we're going to talk about today, you need to go over to the download section and download a fresh copy of Blender 2.93, because that is where all of the source is, and we can have fun doing that. So with Blender 2.93 open right here, we can actually go over, so let's just go all the way here and start taking a look at some of the cool geometry nodes. So right here I have this object selected. If I click on the new button, let's start off with a fresh one. All right, there's a lovely fresh one I love so much, and it just simply makes sense to share this one with you, and it is the join geometry node. So there is an update to the join geometry node, and if you take a look at the previous version of Blender 2.93, which is this one, so I guess this is from last week. So if you go over, this is what you have if you're working with Blender from the previous week. So if you go over here and you type in the word join, this is what you're going to get. So you have a geometry that has, or you have a node, a join geometry node that has two geometry that you can append to that. So we can simply append that, and we can also append transform. So I can grab that transform right here, and we can do 1 and 2, and this is like the maximum thing that is the maximum thing that you can do. So you can also go ahead and copy, paste, and redo this over and over, so there is no multi-entry to this join node. But all that is changed because now there is a beautiful join node that you can play with. So we can have this, and you can actually do a lot of things with this. All right, so we can go back and do that simple transform that we talked about earlier, and I can connect that and connect this other one, and I can also do some more. So I can copy, paste, drag this down, go all the way here, and do the same thing right over there. And you can see it allows for multi entries right here. So we can also do the same thing, drop that right there, go all the way here, and also connect this one right over here. So this way you have one join node that does everything that you want. Very similar to what you have in Houdini, and it just simply makes sense. So at this point you can transform towards this axis, which is pretty, and you can transform to this axis and also transform to this axis. So lovely stuff you can work with. Now this would save a lot of time and also give you less nodes to bother about, and you will work way more efficiently. So with this said, let's also look at something else that is cool. So last week when we talked about the nodes, we talked about the fact that there is a point to volume. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and type in that word, point node. So we said there was a point to volume node, so you can see that right there. And what does this do? So what we saw is with this node, you can actually convert the points that exist on a geometry to volumes, and you can do that, and you can see what you have here. Now for those who will be confused, like how is this even happening? All right, so how this happens is very, very simple. You see we have a simple geometry right here. This geometry, if I select this and press the tab key, it has 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 points. All right, so what happens is this node looks at the number of points that exist with this geometry or on this geometry and converts these points to volumes. And this is very loud. All right, it is loud and it is huge, because at this point I can go over to the edit mode like I am right now, right click and subdivide, and we can even have way more points. All right, so you can do a lot of things with this, but this is not even, this is not where the whole magic is. The magic comes in when you can, so I can just jump back. So the magic comes in when you can now convert this, which is a simple volume, to mesh, and you can see this. Lovely. So at this point you can now do things like this, and you can also go ahead and even do more crazy things. All right, so you can do more crazy things like doing a simple copy of this point and converting this as well, and you just have a lot of things that you can work with. So imagine how much things that you can get out of this, and with this you can also go through and do some more stuff. So we've looked at how you can create volumes from points, and also how you can convert these things to meshes, and this is just wild. So let's take a look at something else. So right here we do have ourselves a very nice node. And what we would like to take a look at is the align rotation to vector. So a very good example for this is by simply getting Suzanne right there, and we will do a simple point. So we would like to distribute some points, that's for sure. And we would also like to go in there and do some instancing because we would like to use Suzanne to instance around that. So select Suzanne as the object that we would like to instance, and you would notice we have that there. I'm just going to go ahead and drop this one down. You guys also know I love scaling stuff, so I would switch over. So let's just go ahead and select that. I would switch over and get the scale, which is going to be like the point scale. And because I would like to drive this based off vectors, which is like X, Y, and Z, yep, I can also add a value. So instead of going in and dialing this one after the other, you can just simply use a value node and you can control all this stuff. All right, so with this here, what we would like to do exactly is to play with the align stuff. So we have this align rotation to vector, and what this simply means is objects by default does have, vectors, okay? So we would like our object, or we want our points to be aligned to a certain vector, okay? So right now we would like the rotation to be aligned to a certain vector, and we can actually go in there and drop this. So once we drop that, you would notice, first of all, it is set to automatic. Meanwhile, let's just simply hide this Suzanne, that's a reference point. So we can actually look at this, and you notice that it's within the X, and we can also go over to Y. You'll notice how this looks, and we can also go over to Z. And you would notice by default that all of these objects, they are automatically aligning themselves. You can also choose to change the pivot. So I can go over to the X axis right now and change the pivot, and I can also change it maybe to Y, and I can also change the pivot to Z. So depending on the pivot I'm changing this to, I can also use this to control. And let's go back and set this all the way to 1. By default, you should always leave this at X, or maybe simply leave it at that automatic. And you can also use the factor to change and also do some very lovely stuff. Something else which is also right here for you that you can use and get the most out of it is this. So you probably have seen object info. So this object info is a very lovely node that you can work with and get the information of a given object. Right now there is a collection info, so you can now get the information of a given collection. You can load that collection in, you can drive several stuff with this collection, and you can also get the most out of it by simply working with these things. So these are some very lovely nodes that are available right now. So for those who like to test this thing out, you like to drive some stuff, you want to play with things, you want to add some join, you want to do that join thing. I'm very excited about this one. So if you want to do that join thingy and do some crazy stuff with this, you can obviously knock yourself out and do this ones and get some things happening for you. With this said, let's also go ahead and talk about something else that doesn't deal with nodes. So about a day or two ago, they posted this, which has to do with the werewolf gremlin, big earring, the Sprite Fright movie influence. So just in case you want to read more about this, you want to see what inspired what, you can actually go over to the link in the description and you will be able to read more about these things. So last week we talked about the chunkification thingy. Meanwhile, there is a brand new add-on that they've made. Now this add-on is a character pipeline add-on that would help people working in the same studio or working in the same team work on the same file at the same time. So for example, let's say you're into hair, someone is into maybe things like shading, and maybe someone is into animation or creating the rig. At this point, you guys will be able to work simultaneously and not, like they say here, stepping on anyone's toes. Now, instead of waiting long hours for the animator to finish the job before you start doing some texturing, or maybe you're waiting for the texturing artist to finish, now at this point you guys can work simultaneously on the same file and get some things happening for you. So there is a very nice general logic thing which is here, and of course I'm going to go ahead and share some things with you guys, but there's a very nice general logic thing that is here, which has to do with you have a file, you export that file out, and then anyone within your team will be able to access this depending on the type of stuff that you've actually made available for them to work with. So how does this work? Now for us to test this one, we're going to dive directly into Blender 2.91. So I've already gone ahead to test something out, and if I go here, you'll notice that we have it called the character pipeline. So what happens is, by default, if you already have the idea, or let's say you have a character, what you can do is you can define the character's name, and there's a collection, and you can also define the collection where that thing exists. And right now, if you would like to work based off the geometry, because I think that's a fair place to start off, you can also choose to work based off the geometry. If there's an additional script you want to add, you can go ahead and add that, and right over here is where the file which you'll be saving will exist. So let's say, for example, this file is called Johnny. So let's say it's Johnny, for example, right? You'll notice that automatically, because we press the enter key, automatically it says johnny.modeling.blend. And if we switch over to grooming, it changes the name. And if we switch over to shading, it changes the name as well. At this point, updating selected is not something that you would want to do because you haven't saved your file. So I already did something as a test before. It's called blah. All right, so I'm just gonna call it blah. So it's here. So what we have here is a very simple, a simple file, the same mode I explained to you guys. You can notice the name is just simply new. I just saved it as that, saved it out so that I can use it to explain how this thing works. So if you go over to a brand new version, or let's say someone that's working on the same team with you, have the same file accessible through a network drive or something. Let's say we have this stacked side by side. I would like you guys to consider these as the modeling artist. All right, so this is the window for the modeling artist, the PC for the modeling artist, and he's responsible, he's responsible for making the models. And maybe this might be like the loop dev guy, or probably someone that is into doing something else, maybe grooming and stuff and so on and so forth. So what happens is, if he would like to reference this file, instead of loading this same file and not getting the updates that's happening here, could go ahead and press N on the keyboard, go over here, click on this button, locate the file where it is on maybe the team's hard drive or the network drive, and load that here. Now once that is loaded, go ahead and select the collection that is responsible for that and click on update object. Of course, once you do that, you'll notice that we have this one here. And so what happens is this. Now if I go in here, let's say I'm the modeling artist, all right, and I go in here and press the tab key and switch over to face, select one particular point. Let's do something that's going to be visible. Let's say we do that, press the tab key as well, and save. At any time, maybe the artist that is working here is maybe into grooming or something like that. At any time they go over to where they have the file type as geometry and click on the word update, automatically this updates. Now this is going to be very useful for those working on the same project but would like to share files and not wait for one person to finish before the other person proceeds. And this by far reminds us of something that we've seen before. So this one is something that the folks at Blender Foundation have actually released, and that is exactly what they are using for the SpriteFright at this point. So they did create this pipeline for SpriteFright, so anyone who would like to grab it can actually go over to the GitLab and grab this one for free. So you want to read more about it, I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the description for this so you guys will be able to read more about it and see how it works. But then if you want to try this one for yourself, you can go over to the GitLab. And of course, this reminds us of this tool, the mixer tool from the folks at Ubisoft. We talked about this one last year, and it's very cool to see that it is still alive and kicking. So what is this tool, a lot of you guys would ask? And what this tool is a very simple tool that I think, for the most part, I think this would work for people working on the same project and not at the same place or at the same space at a given time. What do I mean by this? So let's say you're working with a team and you're maybe in Amsterdam and someone is in Brazil, something like that. You guys can work on the same file and not exist in the same physical space. Contrary to the previous one which we just looked at, which is the character pipeline from the folks at Blender Foundation. That one works, but I think it works more for those in the same physical space. And what the mixer does is, if you press N on the keyboard, so let's actually do that with this. If you press N on the keyboard and you go over to your mixer, by default, that add-on is for free, all right? So this add-on is for free and you can download it and play with it. So if you already have the mixer installed, like I've done right here, what you need to do is, if you press N on the keyboard, so let's start off with this one. If we press N on the keyboard, you can choose to assign a username and then assign an IP address. And once you assign an IP address, you need to also assign a port address. Now, once you assign the IP address and the port address, and the same person that is working on the same file with you, so let's just go ahead and change this name to Mike. So the same person that's going to work on the same file with you can also put in the same host name or the same IP and also the same port. Across the globe, you can work with anyone. At this point, if I go ahead and hit the connect button, we have that, and I can choose to create a room. So I'm just going to call this room jump. Okay, so we would like to jump into this room. So I'm just going to call this jump and click on create room. Now, let's say Mike is somewhere in Amsterdam and John is in Brazil. He did create this, and Mike right here in Amsterdam can just go over, put in the IP, put in the port, click on connect, and he would notice this called jump. You know, whatever you created here, you know, Mike is going to be able to see that. And once Mike sees that, Mike can choose to join this room. And once Mike joins this room, automatically Mike will be able to see what John is looking at and also see how John is working on the model in real time. John could be like, okay, Mike, I could see you. I see what you're doing right here, and I would like to do something, you know, very lovely by, let's say, going all the way there, pressing the tab key and making some stuff. You guys know I love to do this stuff, so I'm just gonna go ahead and press 3 on the keyboard, press I, and you know, do a simple extrude, and let's just extrude that way. And at this point, you could notice that this is happening on the fly. So whatever thing that John does, Mike gets to see, and whatever Mike chooses to do, John would also be able to see that. So let's say you want to add in a brand new geometry, you can also go ahead and add in a brand new geometry like Suzanne right there. And of course, you will be able to see this. So this way, those who are working, you know, across the globe can collaborate on the same file and get cool stuff happening. But the caveat to this is still in its very, very experimental stage, and there is a huge warning that you shouldn't use this for your final project, but you could use this as a test. You can use this to, you know, do some cool stuff. If you want to improve on this, you can also go ahead and download this and actually start working with it. Now, these files are very, very useful for those who like to work as a team. You want to collaborate with a lot of people at the same time, or with a couple of people, or with your team members, and you want to share data, you want to do some stuff. This is definitely going to be very useful for you guys. We also have one final add-on, which I promised you guys that I'm going to share with you. And it is from a wonderful creator known as Sanis Lovart. Now, this is called the Cube Blocker add-on for Blender. It's for free it's just for free. And remember, one time we talked about the fact that if you download Blender 2.93 and if you also download Blender 2.92, that we have this tool that exists right here. Now, if you want to use this tool and you don't want to get any version of Blender that has to do with the 2.9 series, you know, you want to work with 2.8, you're comfortable with 2.8, which is quite stable at this point, you can actually do some cool stuff with this. So we can go in and grab a brand new scene. Once you download that add-on, you can go over to the add section and you notice that we have the Cube Blocker. So what does this do? If you go over to the Cube Blocker, you can choose to bring in a plane, and right now you have this beautiful add-on that you can use to create some stuff around surfaces. So let's say we want to add some more stuff, so we can click and create stuff around surfaces. You can snap these things if you want. So I did find this one, and I think it's a very useful add-on. All right, so it's a very useful add-on, and I would like you guys to go ahead and play with this one. If you want me to do a full review about this, please put that in the comment section, and of course I will go ahead and take a look at it and do a full review for that. There are certain things about this one that actually it makes me smile a lot, and that has to do with you can choose to load up so many other things. So let's say you want to bring in things like a cylinder. You can also go ahead and grab that cylinder. You can play with the segments. Right now you notice our cylinder segment is set to 16, and if we would like to increase that, we can hold down S on the keyboard and we can roll, and you can increase that segment real quick, and you can simply click and you can create that stuff. And for those who like to do some snapping, you want to do some grid snapping, of course you can also choose to do all of that. You can go in and press X on the keyboard and you'll notice that you have that. And if you want to increase the snapping segment, you can also choose to do that. If you hold down C, you can increase the snapping segment. You can turn on snapping on and off, so just in case you would like to create some stuff around this part, you can also do that and get some very good results with it. So lovely stuff right here. I would like to know what you guys think about this one in the comment section. And before we go, the folks at Blender Foundation are still looking for a render guy. Okay, so if you go over to the job section, they're still looking for the post of a rendering software engineer, and if you have a portfolio that suits this, you can also go in there and get this one happening for you. And that's about it. Tell me what you guys think about this one in the comment section. And of course, if you like this video or you learned something from this, you can go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And if you're new here, it's going to be amazing for you to hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications so that you don't miss the next video or the next update. And until I see you guys again with a tutorial update, Free Friday, Tutorial Tuesday, tips and tricks, things like this. Peace.